Hey everyone, morning, good afternoon, good evening. Maria is here already. Good morning to Maria. Let me just get back to the chat and then I can do boop. Check that out. Okay, so just a quick update. This is my third time doing this, and why am I calling it serendipity and synchronicity, and what's it all about? And it's about, ever since I was a child, I just have been really curious, more curious, it seems, than most people. And when a child is at a certain age, but they're like, but why? But why? And I never quite got all my whys answered. But I have noticed as I grew up that things happen in life that I don't understand still, but there are some like miracles or changes that happen, sometimes little. I guess I call serendipity a little change, and synchronicity to me is more of a bigger, it's a larger change, maybe even changing the trajectory of my life. And often for me, there is a higher power or God involved. And so I'm really excited about my guest today. Really, really excited about my guest today, Adrian Williams. Why I was laughing was because Maria wrote another comment and I was laughing. Yes, I was. Oh my gosh, I must have driven my parent. I mean, even my kids. They're one time. Have you ever seen? Some craft people take the old typewriters and they take the little keys and they make them into jewelry, earrings. Well, my daughter gave me a one that was a bookmark, and it was the question mark. And she said, I got this for you because you always ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Anyway, how we got today here with Adrian is that it involves serendipity and synchronicity, and some of the people that Maria knows. I got hooked up with some people on LinkedIn. I guess it's called a pod that I'm in, and Maria's in it, and this woman named Tanya is in it, and I was asking her, we were talking about coaching one day, we were talking about what she does, what I do, and I was saying, well, I really want to do an online course, and she said, oh my God, Adrian is your guy. So that is serendipity, and perhaps a serendipity can turn into a synchronicity, because taking the course with you, Adrian, was amazing and is changing my life and is changing my business.
Good.
So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, and then I would love to hear what you think serendipity means and synchronicity means, and then we'll get into back and forth.
Yeah. So, Adrian Williams, and I help coaches, experts create their online courses. And, I take them through the process from start to finish. And obviously with Joan, she had the ideas, but it was how to put it all together. And yeah, I've been working with Tanya. She'd gone through my course and obviously, had mentioned me to you, and that kind of led on, and we worked together, and you've got now two courses that came out at the end of it. And it was, great working. And I think for me, what really comes into it is that there are so many things that we don't absolutely kind of understand about how things work, that sort of lead to unexpected things. And, I'm become more and more sort of interested and involved in things like the sort of law of attraction and sort of the quantum field, quantum physics, these sorts of things, and how, sort of energetically things are linked. And for me, I think so much of it, we don't consciously kind of realize or feel, and perhaps rather as you were the curious child and you had these things and these interests and wanted to know, and I think you're far more open to things as a child because you don't have all this sort of weight of education and accepted fact on you. You're open to these things, but yet we kind of get closed off as we grow up. But I think there is so much that we don't understand. You think of a friend and 10 minutes later they're on the phone to you. There just are these sort of energetic links that we don't really understand. I think we're getting more of an understanding as our conscious awareness of these things expands. But it's so much of it is kind of in cutting edge physics of the quantum, but so much is starting to kind of be realized. I must admit, it's very exciting.
You know what I really liked about what you said just then was, and then I'm going to put Elizabeth's comment up so I can address that before it gets lost in the chat. To be open, be open, that to never stop seeking. That no matter what people say, I mean, remember the Earth was flat, and so I remember as a child, I grew up in a pretty strict Catholic family, and I remember knowing that evolution was not something Catholics at the time believed, and but I was like, but I didn't have a place to actually say these things because I thought, because they said God created the world in 7 days, something like that. Well, we don't know how long a day, and I was told we don't know how long a day is. And so I kind of was like, so then couldn't we have evolution? But I wasn't allowed to speak it to anybody. Some of the thoughts I've had are so, it's like the Earth is round, it's not flat. At that time would have been crazy. So I just kept these things to myself. And then, and now people have come to believe that they can coexist. So before we go on, Elizabeth is asking, hi, Elizabeth, good morning.
Hi.
What stood out to me about Adrian's course creation skills that made the experience fabulous? Well, as a matter of fact, Adrian just made, we did a testimonial, and so you can, I'll make sure you get that and you can see it. His knowledge of, here I am, Adrian, I'm doing this. Let me think. Like I have this overwhelming need to be perfect, so I want to make sure I say the right words. So his patience, his availability. I met with him twice a week, which really kept me on schedule. Now he has a group coaching and a one-on-one, and I chose the one-on-one. And so he helped me so much with my technology. He would walk me through stuff. And then we did course marketing, which I had never done before, which is, I said, well, I want to write this course. I want to do this course for first-time leaders. And he's like, does anybody even want to attend the course? I'm like, what are you talking about? So I had to do market research and then develop the course. And he had everything set up and then gave me, everything I needed on a Google Drive.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to know, Elizabeth, before we go on to Serendipity and Synchronicity more? So I mentioned Tanya, and we both mentioned Tanya. I put it in the comment that I didn't mention her last name is Tanya Pluckrose. You can find her on LinkedIn also. And she helped me serendipitously get connected with Adrian. So back to what you were saying, Adrian, is that you mentioned open-minded.
Yeah, I think, as young children, you are open to anything, but obviously, you receive pretty much anything as fact, up to perhaps say the age of 7, that you're this big sponge, and whatever you're told by parents, older siblings, teachers, etc., it just gets accepted as fact, and your kind of curiosity and open-mindedness perhaps kind of gets dulled, because you're taking all of these impulses, and obviously, so much of that can cause trouble later in life, because you have those what may be limiting beliefs of your parents that you pick up, or siblings, teachers, whereas as a young child, you're absolutely open and have an incredible imagination. You can have a couple of old boxes, but yet it's a spaceship that takes you to the moon, or whatever it is. And I think over time, that wonder and daydream curiosity kind of gets dulled as you grow older, and you're more and more sort of fitted into the mold that you're expected to fit, to please your parents, to please your teachers, because that's the way you're expected to behave and believe.
Yeah, and you know what I thought of, if I can interrupt for just a second, what I thought of just at that moment, as you're saying some of this, it's really moving the neurons in my brain around a bit. And for efficiency, like, people didn't have time to answer all the questions. Literally did not have time to answer all the questions. Like, we got to go. I'm one of 7. I'm second to the youngest of 7. So Joan's asking another question. We got to get out the door. Is your teeth brushed? Are your teeth brushed? Blah, 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 blah. So I often think it's not intentional. I don't think they meant us harm. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm sure most of the time it isn't meant to be harmful. But as you say, it could be lack of time, lack of patience, possibly at times. The constant why, and you've got to the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th why to try and explain something, and so yes, largely not meant to harm, but probably a reflection again of their own limiting beliefs, or programming, and so on. So I'm sure the intent is not to be harmful, but it can be harmful, I guess, even if the intent wasn't there. But I do think that so much, particularly when it comes to education, is really to make you fit into the mold. I must, that's kind of one of my hobby horses. Really, is how the education system is really there to make you disciplined and fit into the mold, to make you a disciplined worker, rather than actually open you and make you curious and make you interested in what's around you. It's just fact that you have to accept, but never sort of have any kind of critical thought about.
Yeah.
But,
let me say quickly to our listeners, just check in. If you're listening, put something in the comment and I'll flash it across the screen, or just tell me where your name and where you're from. And we want to welcome everybody who's listening on Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, and YouTube at this moment. The way this system is set up, unless I haven't figured it out yet, I can't see how many people are listening on LinkedIn. On Facebook, I can see right now I have 1 person listening. There were 2, now there's 1. So, but on LinkedIn, I don't know you're there unless you post something in the chat. Okay. Back to you, Adrian.
Yeah. Yes. So I think it is sort of easy to sort of dull the child's curiosity, and for me, I think the more I've kind of learned and found out about, particularly kind of energy and quantum, is that there are so many possibilities, and you are absolutely in control of what your future can be. I think you so often get driven by what are outside forces in your life without actually realizing that you are in control of so much, and that take control of what you can control and let go of what you can't. But you can do whatever you want to do, but everything comes with your initial idea and thought, but that can be developed and you can become more consciously aware of how to do what you want to do.
And I'm going to break in and say, for me, that has been a calling. There has been always this voice inside me that just wouldn't go away. That sometimes I can't speak what I am thinking or feeling in front of whoever I'm with, but in my mind, I just kind of go, but I also see it from this point of view. But if I bring up that point of view, it might not be very good. And I have to tell you, every time you're on here, Bill, I'm going to have to tell the story. Somehow, Bill, I don't even remember the first time he came on. I said, are you single or something like that? Because I was like, I'm single, and if anybody wants this whole package, it's available. So he was telling me that he's married. I don't know. I think 29 years now, because I thought it was more like 40. But so then the next week when he came on, he said, I still haven't found you a guy. But
I suppose that that would be right for the
exactly
show, really, wouldn't it?
it would be serendipity and synchronicity.
Wouldn't it just?
You know what? You mentioned the law of attractions, and I believe a lot in the law of attractions. I have one minor issue with law of attractions, is that it seems like they purposefully don't say the word God, when I think a lot of the things that they're talking about have been influenced by some sort of higher power, some sort of magic, whatever you want to call the God, good orderly direction. Some people get offended by the word God. So there has to be something that's moving things around. So tell us more about the.
I mean, I think for me, without wanting to either be religious or upset anybody who is religious, I think you can have this, higher power, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, that there is this sort of energy, kind of collective energy, and whether it's, we all have God within us, whether you want to believe that, it's sort of a figurehead to follow, that's up to you. But I think it is belief in that higher power, which is within us all. And you can do whatever you want to do. It is within you, but yet so often we're constrained by what we've been led to believe by other people.
So for those people that are listening that don't know of the law of attraction or the book, The Secret, can you just kind of tell us more about what it means?
It means for me, or for
Sure. Yeah.
I think for me, I went through, it's really been the last couple of years that I've kind of got more and more into it, and particularly Bob Proctor, who obviously is, if you like, I was going to say the godfather of the law of attraction in many respects.
Oh, is he? Okay, I'm going to put his name here because Tanya talks about him a lot too. Proctor,
Yeah.
like that.
Bob Proctor. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. And I mean, he's to the taking teachings from other people, sort of Nightingale and amongst others. But for me, I think it is that ultimately everything is within your control. And I went through quite a bad time a few years ago, and it was really my response to external things. And I came across the idea of separation of tasks. It was Alfred Adler's kind of idea that basically I'm responsible.
Adler, like
Adler, Adler. He was a contemporary
psychiatrist back in the day.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a sort of contemporary of Freud and Engels.
I never knew his first name. He's a contemporary of Freud, or he studied under Freud or something. Alfred, A-L-F-R-E-D. Okay, Adler.
But he, Albert rather. Was Albert? Anyway, Adler. Anyway, but yeah, he came up with this idea. Essentially, you are responsible for your own thoughts, behaviors, and actions, and you shouldn't allow, seek to control the thoughts, behaviors, and actions of others, nor should you allow them to control you. And for me, that was at that point quite a kind of revolutionary thing, because it is up to you how you respond to what other people in your life. So you don't have to believe what somebody else is telling you, or it is all within you. And I think the law of attraction kind of takes that sort of further in many respects, that you are in control of circumstance, that if you don't like the circumstances, it is for you to change the circumstances around you, not to seek to control outside. You can only control what you do, and that it is ultimately your choice, your thoughts, your behaviors, and your actions that determine what goes on in your life. And you shouldn't allow the external to be controlling you. Or at least if you do, don't complain about it, because that is your choice to allow it to be controlling you.
So for someone before I get into that question, I just think it's really curious that you mentioned Adler, because at the time there was Freud, Adler, and Jung. And Jung is the guy that came up with the term synchronicity. So that's interesting. What would you say to people who, because we hear that all the time, that's your choice, you must want it that way. If you didn't want it that way, you would change it. What do you say to people who just can't even take that first step?
Well, I think you have to accept personal responsibility. If you don't like the circumstances that you're in, ultimately you are the one that can change those circumstances. And to expect other people to change for you is kind of not really how it works.
The only person I can change is myself. Okay, let me tell you this. I tell my clients, in any situation, accept it, change it, or leave it. So some people can't change. They don't have the money. They don't have, for whatever reason, they're stuck in a job they don't like. They're stuck in a relationship they don't like. Whatever. They can't get, because of what you mentioned this term before, limiting beliefs are holding them back from even starting. So what are your thoughts on accept it, change it, or leave it?
Yeah, because that's ultimately allowing them the choice.
Yes.
You
Yes.
either accept the situation you're in,
Mm-hmm.
change it, which very often is, in the first instance, probably changing your perception and
Mm-hmm.
response to it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or change it, which may be, getting a different job, leaving that relationship, or whatever the case may be. But it is your choice. And
Yeah.
I often think, I mean, I've used the term limiting beliefs. I think essentially they come down to beliefs. And it just depends whether you allow them to be limiting or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I obviously sort of worked people, and I'm far from perfect. I've gone through a lot of changes myself in the last few years. As I was going to mention earlier, I was in a really bad place a few years back, and was kind of prompt my journey down this path. But ultimately, I was allowing external forces to kind of control me, and my reaction and response was to allow it to impact me in a negative way. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at that point, but I guess I kind of took my personal power, for want of a better way of putting it, and changed the situation that I was in, by accepting the responsibility of what I could control,
Mm-hmm.
which essentially was my own thoughts, which led to my behaviors, which led to my actions. And it all starts with thought.
Right.
What goes on up in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And your subconscious is just so powerful,
Powerful.
which, and obviously so much more, whilst you may consciously think
Mm-hmm.
the conscious is in control,
Mm-hmm.
it's really the subconscious with all of its programming, good and bad,
Mm-hmm.
that actually runs the show.
Right. I want to tell everyone a story about one time when I had a job that I didn't like, but I couldn't leave it. So I had to learn how to accept it. And so I made a list of the things. Um, a lot of you don't know that I had cancer in my eye, which is a really, really deadly cancer. And so I had really good health insurance, and that was really, really important for me. So I made a list of all the things the positives that the job gave me, as opposed to focusing on the negatives or what I perceived as negatives or I perceived that they were doing to me. And then it totally changed my outlook. Like, I don't have to stay at this job. I'm choosing to stay at this job, and I'll leave it when I figure out a couple more things. Especially, there's very few people in the world that know what to do with me. Well, in a lot of ways, actually. but very few people know what to do with ocular melanoma because it's so rare. But I made a conscious choice to do that, and it made it much more tolerable, easy to a better way to get through it. So that's just
and I think this thing of taking and accepting what you can control and letting go of what you can't can be incredibly liberating, because you do just realize that there is so much in life that you have no control over, and to worry about it is unproductive because you have no control, and it leads to dissatisfaction or upset or whatever emotions may come up with it. So controlling what you can control and kind of letting go of things that things or people that you have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to listen to the news a lot, and obviously we know that probably 4/5 of the news that we ever watch is all bad in some respect, and maybe 1/5 is a happy story, if that. But I kind of consciously stopped listening to it, because so much of it was stuff that either didn't impact me, or I obviously had absolutely no control over. And why allow my stress levels or worry or concerns to be directed to things that didn't impact and I had no control.
That you had no control over. Yeah.
I think so much that's happens to us now, there is so much information, so much bombarding us all the time, from news, from notifications. I think notifications are on phones. It can be incredibly concerning, because you're getting pinged by people and expecting that you feel that you have to give a response straight away, and all of this, and it's always kind of working to somebody else's agenda, and ultimately that might not work very well for you. So yeah, I turn off my notifications. I look at my phone when I look at my phone, when I want to, and respond when I want to. Hopefully people don't think that I'm being too antisocial, but rather than being pulled by other people's agendas, it's kind of working to mine.
I agree. I turned off all my notifications. I watched that movie Social Dilemma. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's like a horror movie about how the sound messes with our norepinephrine or dopamine or something. Then anyway, I turned off all my notifications, and so I do miss things, and I'm very bad at getting back to people. I'm working on that, because there's so much stuff that comes in, and yeah. The other, if you had something else, go ahead, because I had another question.
No, I know. I was just going to say, I think probably before mass media, people were probably generally a lot happier, because their world, albeit a lot smaller, was far more controllable. Now, with mass media, not only is it sort of other people pinging you and things, but it's things going on the other side of the world, which perhaps 100 years ago you wouldn't have known about, and certainly wouldn't have known about as quickly or as immediately pressing as now, I think. And for me, I think very often, whilst we have evolved in many respects, we're still essentially evolving within us at probably a much slower rate than the technology and everything else around us.
Right.
It's only, I'm kind of plucking figures out a little bit out there, but sort of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, that we were sort of in kind of Bronze Age, Stone Age, or whatever. And in evolutionary terms, that's pretty short.
Well, that makes me think of it's another thought I've had, never share with anybody because it's too bizarre. We still have the reptilian brain. Why hasn't that disappeared and gone away over all this time? Because it serves a function, right? And it's still that we still have the innate fight, flight, or freeze. The desire to survive.
And that sort of fight, flight response is obviously there for a very, very good reason. It's for millennia, it saved us from being eaten by saber-toothed tiger or whatever threat was out there. But now that gets triggered by news, by notifications, by many other things. And for so many people, they're in this sort of constant state of stress.
Right.
And the cortisol flooding the system, shutting down your immune system or compromising it to a degree, potentially making you sicker, and all of these things. And for so many people, it's, stress is an absolutely necessary part of our existence. It's there for a very good reason, but it's when it's an excess, and you're constantly in that space where your sort of cortisol is flooding and getting triggered, that it becomes really bad for us. And evolutionary terms, our bodies haven't changed to deal with the stresses of modern life.
Now, Gail is saying it's evolved based on the environment. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, but I would say that a lot of it is down to how you perhaps respond to your environment. I think you can look at a sort of a cellular level that, our cells respond to the environment, but it's that response that makes a difference to how it affects us. And obviously you can choose to ignore or cut out things that might be causing it, but essentially it comes down to our response. And for me, one of my responses is turning off notifications, so that I'm not getting pinged into action or a news story that causes stress to be there. So yeah, I think it is ultimately down to within your control. There was a very interesting study some years back. I forget the name of it, but looking at some air traffic controllers in Texas and how they were dealing with stress. They were obviously had a high stress job, life and death decisions, working in this air traffic control, and they followed them for about a year and looked at their levels of illness, and that they found that those that didn't deal with stress well were the ones who had more colds, more days off work. They may have had trouble at home because, again, they were taking stresses home and this sort of thing. But, they were generally sicker. Those that dealt with stress and, more resilient, had better responses to it, didn't suffer the colds and days off that their colleagues were. And, they were all working in the same building. So they were all, more or less exposed to the same bugs, the same air, the same chances perhaps of catching something from colleagues. But those that were more resilient and dealt better with the stresses were far less sick. And, I think this is it. It is your response to the environment. Where I don't think as a body, our physical body has probably evolved that much, because in evolutionary terms, it's relatively short space of time, and particularly the last 150 years, there's been a rapid increase in the daily stresses.
Yeah.
But it's how you choose to deal with it.
At one point you talked about energy when you were talking about kind of about law of attraction and energy. Do you want to expand on how you think energy is involved in who we are or the choices we make? Or
yeah, I mean, I guess you come down to it, we're all kind of bundles of energy formed into this physical form, but we are just energy when you come down to it, obviously in an organic form and all of that. But I think, I've recently done some sort of training on energy healing and doing energy work. And for me, I find it quite remarkable. I was working with somebody this week who was had some problems around, working and following up with people and this sort of thing. And we kind of worked on it, and it was working purely on allowing the emotion of that to express itself, and talking them through it. And I was doing some sort of energy healing and things, and in half an hour we worked down from this feeling, this problem being at a level 10 out of 10 down to a level 1.
Wow.
And that was just one session of half an hour. But this had been a really big problem for them. And I'll check in to see that it's been resolved. But I know I've been through this process, working on things with other people, and these have been things that have been absolutely eradicated. But how, and this was over Zoom. It wasn't even physically together. How that works, I can't say I know, other than this feeling of energetic connection. And for me, I think it's more that everything is sort of energetically connected, but sort of tapping into that, which we perhaps aren't sort of consciously aware of, or have lost the kind of conscious awareness of, but just perhaps because we don't understand it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
No, I totally believe in energy and the kinetic, the connection. And so what insight I got from what you were just saying was, and let me know if this resonates with you, that it takes a lot of energy to keep all those like unfelt feelings or uncried tears stuffed down. And then for some reason, what you said, I envisioned like this release.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of energy.
Yeah. And, most, and I guess it happens a lot with sort of limiting things, but the fear of doing something will show up in a physical manifestation, whether it's a knot in the stomach, pain in the heart, a constriction in the throat, or whatever. But there's a physical manifestation, and generally we try and avoid and suppress, repress, run away from that physical feeling, which is what leaves us it's unresolved. And for me, very often these can show up in physical manifestations, physical problems. This sort of stuck energy, essentially. But releasing it, letting it be manifest, accepting it, but that in its own way can release that stuckness, that energy from the body, and so much of that can show up in sort of negative ways, in a physical form.
Oh, absolutely. I studied under this relationship coach for many years, Dr. Pat Allen in Orange County, which is a place in California. And she said, what the mind can't think and the mouth can't speak, the body will show. So I do feel that it's energy, and it's deep, 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 and maybe it starts with synchronicity or serendipity. You see something, someone says something, and you say, Me too. But I didn't know I could do anything about it. Or I felt that way, but I thought I was the only one. Let's see what
Yeah.
Gail is saying exactly. Our lizard brain reacts to our new environment, bad news, horrible bosses, etc., versus tigers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It is that very base reaction
Yeah. Yeah.
to what's going on. And so, we no longer have the saber-toothed tiger to worry about, but it's, the boss, the phone, the notification, the emails coming in, the traffic jam, getting cut up at a junction or whatever it is. But it's just these sort of day-to-day stresses which trigger that response and that flood of cortisol and sort of other stress chemicals.
Oh yeah, cortisol causes cancer. Yeah. Another thing, like an awakening. Whenever I have guests on, they teach me more than I learned so much from this. So I'm wondering. I want to throw this out to you and Gail or everyone but Gail's been putting in some comments. Anyone who's listening, that what you and I do is almost like we take people from surviving to thriving. And I know Gail's a coach and she's a good friend and we study together, that the reptilian brain helps us to survive. And that's what we needed to do back in the day when the tiger or whatever century you want to get into. And then we help people move to thriving. Yeah. Obviously you're surviving because you're still here. You're still above ground. Now let's take you from there to what could be. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, so many people are stuck in survival mode. And this is part of why I kind of started working with coaches, because I realized there's so many people out there that would benefit from coaching, and that you don't have to accept that what you are doing, that the way that you are, the job that you're in, has to be that way forever, unless of course you are happy and want it to be. But so many people go through school, they go into a career because that's or a job because that's where they've been directed, where they've been told that they're going to be best served or best able to do, and they're sort of on this track which may or may not be so much of their choosing. And then some years down the line, they realize, I don't like this job. I don't enjoy it. I don't like the people I'm working with or working for. But they're somehow, they're stuck because that's what they're expected to do. And they're just out of alignment with themselves.
Yeah, I'm only laughing because that's my story. It's like one day I woke up and I was like, how did I get here? What happened? This is not what I envisioned. Yeah.
And I think, very often what changes it, and I think it happens with quite a lot of coaches, people generally, is they get to maybe a kind of like a crisis point in their life, which has largely probably been because they got to this point where they're completely out of alignment, or the circumstances have got so bad that they're effectively forced into change and reevaluation. It's one of the things I say when people are sort of talking about sort of coaching and what niche should I work with, and it's who you are going to be aligned with, because essentially you have to be happy with what you're doing, and you will always be happiest living to your highest values. So if and that is where you will thrive. rather than either living to somebody else's values, the values you're expected to by your parents or your teachers or whatever. But so many people get kind of railroaded into a particular direction, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't create happiness or align with their values, and that is where troubles come in, because essentially they're not living to their highest values, or by what they value the highest.
And you know what? In my coaching business, I give people permission, because sometimes people are just doing the same thing, and what are people going to say? And so I give people permission to think a different way, to take different action that may be disruptive. I mean, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So there might be reactions, but to just, so go ahead, continue. I just want to say, Gail.
Yeah, no, but I guess it's having the courage or the ability to deal with those reactions. And if they're reactions, then you just have a suitable response.
Yeah, and I would say, if you have that thought, to follow through on it. Like, that thought came from someplace outside you that wants the best for you. But before we move on, Gail says, been there. The key is to move beyond your fears and create something new.
Yeah. And I agree. And, your fears will probably largely be a product of your conditioning and make what you've been told, what's expected of you. But all of that is something that's been externally placed on you, rather than, and the trouble is caused because that conflicts with your internal values or your internal desires or alignment.
Exactly. That you might not even know you have, because you pushed it down for so long. You have denied it for so long.
Well, most people just never actually stop to consciously think what they want.
Right.
They just go along the track, as you say, because that's the track they're on, which may have been expected in the way that they went. And for some people, yes, the track that will be the right track for them. It's often something I felt, in schools. The kind of the careers of, well, what do you want to do? Or this is what you should do. Or, you're because you're not academically qualified, you're going to be a failure, or whatever you're told, that you should do this, you should do that, rather than actually sort of being allowed to develop into the direction that you want to develop. But as a child, as a 14, 15-year-old or younger, you'll say, well, what do you want to do? What job do you want to do? Well, you haven't got a clue at that age, because you have no experience of the outside world. You don't know what that job is like. Yes, for some people, they may have very clear, defined ideas, and it will be in alignment, and it'll be the right direction for them, and absolutely great. Yeah, absolutely happy. But for so many people, they haven't got a clue, because it's out of their experience. They can't really be expected to know where they want to go, what they want to do, because it's so out of their experience or knowledge. But yeah, you're sort of pushed into a direction, and kind of that's where you go. And very often, some years down the line, you suddenly realize that you went wrong somewhere. And that's kind of what causes kind of dis-ease about it.
Yeah, dis-ease. Yeah. I remember my son, he probably was 15 or so, 16. And he said, how old were you when you knew what you wanted to be and what you wanted to do? And I said, I'm still trying to figure that out. But
Yeah.
hey, we're coming to the close of the hour, and I don't want to keep you longer than I told you. And thank you so much for anyone that is still with us. I see Gail is still with us. Anybody have a question for Adrian, put it in the chat. And Adrian, this is your time to kind of tell us how to get in touch with you, or how we can follow you.
Absolutely, Gail. Yeah.
That's the benefit of having a coach, Gail says. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because and a good coach will hopefully will bring that out.
Right.
Ask the right questions and bring out what you may not really have really contemplated or thought, or as well as giving the support, accountability, and all of that for you to actually kind of take action towards that.
Yeah.
And just say, this is where so many people will benefit from coaching in whatever area. But I think for me is the great benefit of coaching. And I'm really grateful to the coaches that I've had, people who've helped me through this process. Some of it obviously has been reading and thinking and deciding things myself, but working things out myself. But a lot of it has been from the support of others.
Right. We don't have to be alone. So how can people keep in contact with you, or what do you want to?
I either on LinkedIn, and sort of search Adrian Williams and Parog Agency. It's PARROG Agency. Or
PARROG.
It's a Welsh word for beach.
Wait, PARROG?
That's right, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's it, yeah.
It's a Welsh word for what?
Beach.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Actually, I live 5 minutes from the beach.
Oh, how nice. How nice. And do you speak Welsh?
I have a few words. I can't speak. My daughter, though, she can. She goes to a Welsh language school. So,
how cool is that?
So yeah, she's taught in Welsh.
Oh, nice. And I got to meet Adrian's lovely daughter. She would sometimes join us on our Zoom calls, and she is just so sweet. So her talk about energy. Her energy is amazing. Just she's going to go places. That one.
Yeah, she obviously brings a lot of joy. But I was talking to her the other day about, or she was talking about what she wants to do when she grows up, and it was either wants to be an artist or a YouTuber. Whether she'll combine the two or what, but she's a tremendous artist. It's great, and something can really encourage.
Elizabeth is saying, Adrian, what has been the most exciting coaching story during COVID you have where serendipity and synchronicity crossed paths?
That's a good question. During COVID, I guess for me, COVID has been one of those things which obviously has had so much profound effect on so many people. I think in some respects it has opened a lot of possibilities for me, because so many coaches were forced from being able to work in a face-to-face or workshop, sort of in-person workshop format, to being forced to work online. And that is something that I was doing prior to COVID, and I've helped a lot of coaches make that transition in terms of technically how to do it and the changes they had to make to the way they market, and also the increase in people looking to create courses because so many realized they had to move online. So I guess that is perhaps where COVID has had, dare I say, a positive effect on the way the business and the way I do things. But also in meeting so many coaches that have become more involved online. I do a lot of online networking, various groups, people, meeting people in Australia and America, obviously in the UK and Europe. So I've met so many people that perhaps I wouldn't have met if COVID hadn't have happened.
Yeah. All right. We kind of better close up so we don't keep people too long, and that I respect your time. Also, it's 7:30 at night.
That's right.
There you are. And now's time for you to eat dinner, or you already ate dinner?
I haven't yet. I'll have something.
Yeah. In America, in United States anyway, most people eat earlier. But I know in Europe they eat later. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adrian, for being here. I'm going to let everyone go. Everyone have a wonderful day, and just keep your eyes open and your mind open to synchronicity and serendipity today. Okay, bye. Bye for now.
Bye.